Are we recording right now? Welcome everybody to Beyond I Do. Thanks for joining us on this. Well, we always launch on Thursdays, but you may be joining us on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day it is. You want to succeed in your relationship because that's what this is all about. What is life like after I do, but also before I do? We deal with engagement, marriage, relationships. Today we got a marriage question that came in.
We do. But first, I want to tell you.
Yes, tell me.
So, because I know on our last episode we had said for those that
that just dropped today.
Yeah, the scratch the rim to post it. Well, I got a tag today.
Oh gosh.
She's like, my rims are nice and sparkly. But my side window had a high five with the garage today, and
it's completely hanging off.
It's crushed. I was like, oh, that just adds character. So
that's hilarious.
Hey, you would be more mad at me for that one, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'd be pretty mad if you broke your because nowadays all those mirrors have all this technology in them, so I'd be mad because it's got like the blind spot thing, LED lights. So to change it is like a total. I'd be mad if you rear it.
So hey.
Yeah. So there are ladies out there who are sharing their rim stories or just their car stories, how they busted up their car.
Right?
Yeah. I'm still healing about that whole experience. All right.
Let's get to it.
We have a marriage question. Believe it or not, when the person submitted this, first they submitted as a question to Ashley, and then they kind of shared they don't mind that we talk about it on the podcast, but obviously that we keep them anonymous. Here's the thing. They're embarrassed by the conversation. They're embarrassed that this would even have to be talked about. They don't want it to necessarily, not that they don't necessarily what it seems like, because it's a very long message that you got, a DM. It seems like it's not that they don't want it to be talked about. It's just they think that this is such a embarrassing, unique circumstance that it's like almost like, hey, just text me back the answer. You don't have to talk about it on the podcast, but if you want to, please just leave me out of it type of thing. And here's what I would initially say about that before we get into the question. The question that we're talking about, believe it or not, in some way, shape, or forms, it is not, number one, it's not that it's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's that everybody has different dynamics in their marriage, especially if you get married outside of convictions of being a Christian and having the model of marriage that Christ has called us to. And so to their head, they're thinking, this is such a unique circumstance. This is so embarrassing. This is so blank, blank, blank. But believe it or not, in our years, you and I's years of ministering to particularly most couples we sit with are like new in their faith, but have been in their relationship relatively a long time. So you and I have seen everything under the sun in terms of relationship dynamics that on the outside may look embarrassing.
Right.
So this woman, number one, I would encourage you, you're not the only one. To someone who grows up in a Christian setting, it may seem very odd and very strange, but you and I have done ministry with so many people that have started their relationship outside of Christ. You and I have seen what we would normally say are the strangest of relationship dynamics that we have counseled with people and seeing them have successful relationships on the back end. But it does take hard work and it is foreign and it is uncomfortable. So all that to say, this is not a question you should be ashamed of. This is a question you're proud of yourself that you brought it up and that you're seeking answers to your marriage. So here's essentially the dynamic of the question. We don't have to read it. I can explain it. So what it is, it's a married couple who has the husband recently got into church too, or just her?
Just her, from the context of the message.
Either way, the answer will be the same in terms of how one's responding to the other. But it's a couple. The woman has recently started coming to church. She's given her life to Christ. And she's been married for a number of years to her husband. And so throughout their marriage, which this is secular ideas, the idea of spicing your marriage up, that's talked about all the time, right? Secular sex therapists, secular podcast, secular whatever. And when we say secular, that means non-Christian, right? There are always these ideas around trying to, quote unquote, help relationships by spicing up their marriage. Now, in a Christian context, when a Christian context talks about spicing up your marriage, we're talking about go on vacation together, act like strangers, bump into each other, wear a maid outfit, whatever, right? Like in a Christian context, that's what we're talking about. Try a new position you've never tried before. That's spice in the marriage, right?
I'm laughing so hard because I did that to you at Boiling Crab the other day.
Yeah.
And you walked away in fear.
Oh, yeah. Ashley tried acting like a stranger and started hitting on me. And I was
do you
like,
got a boyfriend? You go, ew.
Your girlfriend. You said,
I heard you have a girlfriend. You have a girlfriend, and you go, ew.
And I walked away.
Sorry.
And so through this couple's endeavor over the years of not being Christian,
Right.
they desired to spice their marriage up. And so as they desired to spice their marriage up, what they started to do was they started to engage in watching what seems to be, because, she says it, but I'm going to fill in some gaps too. So they're engaging with pornography now, probably independently and together. So they're adding pornography into their marriage. They're watching it together. They're, arousing each other by what they're seeing and what they're watching and, what kind of stuff turns you on. And so they're watching it together. They're going, what it seems to be maybe together and separate. They're going to strip clubs. So she starts letting her husband start hitting strip clubs up, start expose as long as he comes home, as long as she's still his main girl, and I don't know if there is any other types of things. She names those and she names some other things, but through our years, we have heard married couples doing threesomes. Yeah. We've heard it all.
Yeah.
Of couples attempting
Swingers,
to spice in swingers, exchanging spouses with their friends. I mean, some people are going to be listening to this podcast and go, this is insane. Does this stuff actually exist? When the other side of people are going to be nodding and saying, yeah, I've been there. Or I am there, or we brought that into our marriage. And so, and you and I, being completely transparent, we have counseled, almost a dozen couples who fit any of these spectrums at any given time. And so it's very common in terms of a person who's not walking with Christ, or their marriage isn't walking with Christ, to have a model of marriage. I mean, we have, we've counseled people who have had hookers involved. You and I we've talked and seen it all. Absolutely. In terms of counseling. And so for this person, they're saying pornography and strip clubs and maybe some other stuff in between, but those would be the big standout ones, at least that I read. And so now, though, that she's following Christ, she's given her life to Christ, she's putting some boundaries with her husband. I don't want strip clubs anymore. I don't want pornography involved anymore. I don't want abuse of alcohol. And so she said that he's been okay about not having alcohol anymore, but he's not okay with the new rules with the strip clubs and the pornography. And he's basically saying, you changed. Well, why do I have to change?
Right.
Like this is what we let in our marriage be. Like, why all of a sudden now that, and I'm feeling, paraphrasing some things, but I'm going from experience of what we've heard from counseling too, is like, why do I have to change since you decide you want to change?
Right.
And basically your question is like, number one, how to approach that, but I'm sure also what is the Christian response even to this aspect, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think for her, she's on this new, like you said, journey of walking with Christ. So when you start to walk with Christ, there's convictions, like you said, you didn't have prior, but now that you're walking with him, she's basically saying, God's not happy with what we're doing. And I know that. And that's the conviction that's starting to arise within her, the Holy Spirit speaking loud to her, saying, we can do this a different way. Yeah. But how do we do it a different way? And how do I transpire that to my husband to where he hears my heart and isn't looking at this as a takeaway, but an additive? Like, I'm adding fruit to you of Christ. I'm adding the fountain, and then that's only if he's coming. So I don't believe I believe she said she's coming. I don't know. Let me read it back to see if he's coming as well. But all that to say is she's in the struggle of conversation with her husband on how do we make our marriage whole again? Or how do we make our marriage whole for the first time?
Yeah.
And I think that for
here's some standout things. Yeah. And this is a common,
she said, obviously he's going to respect me she's like, where do we go from here? He goes, what now? She's like, obviously he's going to respect me and not do it. But as I told him, if you can't be with your wife without watching porn, how are we going to be okay with each other? She's like, I'm stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it seems like she's the one who's come to church.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
seem
yeah.
like he has. And so as we're reading it, and again, because we're trying to consolidate, it's, she really sharing her story here.
Yeah.
And so part of it was she has shared that his rationale for not wanting to stop is everybody does it.
Yes.
And what else will she take away from him now that she's a Christian? Which is a very common feedback.
Absolutely.
Is one person in the marriage who starts to define their life walking with Christ, while another one who either isn't a fan of it or is just apathetic towards it, going like, yeah, that's your journey, but
Yeah.
nothing better changed for my life, right? Don't mess
Right.
up my Sundays. Don't start asking me to go to church with you or whatever that may be, right? And so right away, there is a recognition that this isn't healthy for the marriage. And so I think, let me give my most immediate feedback of what I would say. I would say that if your husband's open to it, you should go talk to a marriage and family therapist and a counselor, because Christ or not, the system of marriage that God has given us is God's framework for healthy marriage. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's not hard. You take two sinful people, you put them in the room, you guys get married. It's not going to be perfect. But for all intents and purposes, the couple that is completely pursuing Jesus' model of marriage, not just Jesus, his model of marriage, that is sacrificial, that is full of love, that is full of forgiveness, that is full of care, all those things like that, that is God's model for family. Mm-hmm. So the things that she's mentioned, strip clubs, pornography, things like that, those are immediately things that are going to negatively impact your marriage in the long run. Yeah, it may have gotten spicy. It may have aroused you a little bit more in the moment. But in the long run, and here's what I mean, why it's a case for the long run. Because if you've asked him to stop doing it and he said why everyone else does it, and his immediate reaction isn't okay, then that means he does enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And he has found a gateway outside of his wife that he enjoys sexual arousal. And guess what that slippery slope starts to do? When you can start to find, and you have told yourself it's okay, not that you're fighting with your flesh and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm married, but I'm aroused when I look at someone and I'm trying to fight with my flesh and I'm trying to do like, that's one thing. But to have told yourself this is okay and this is part of it, this is part of the system. Because there's almost nothing outside of my relationship with Christ that you can't ask me to stop doing that my immediate answer wouldn't be yes.
Right.
Because you're my wife.
Right.
So if you were just like, hey, Adam, I don't like when you use the word shut up in the house. It really offends me. And it reminds me of this person I knew, this teacher or this guy I knew that used to tell me to shut up. I wouldn't be like, well, everybody else says shut up.
Right.
I'd be like, if I want to sacrifice for you and I want you to be healthy in this marriage. This isn't a Christian thing.
Right.
Christ helps us do this, but this is something that this is what we would call common grace.
Right.
To like, if I'm going to love my wife and my wife's like, hey, don't use that anymore, I'm going to be like, okay.
Right.
So if there is something that you ever tell me not to do and my response is not, okay, then it is, why does Adam need that so much?
Right.
Like, hey, Adam, can you stop going to the grocery store in a tank top and a wife beater? Because I feel like, why are you trying to show off your muscles?
Right.
And I'm going, it's hot out. What do you mean? There's other people wearing tank tops. But I know that I'm being gratified by it.
Right.
And you're saying, hey, Adam, I think I don't really like, or hey, babe, I don't like the way you. And flip side, hey, I'm not comfortable with the type of yoga pants that you're wearing. And there's other women out there with yoga pants.
Right. And this isn't in a controlling way. It's in a respectful way to say, hey, I view you as my spouse, and this isn't something that I think you should be doing. Or it leaves room for question of like, this is the third time he went to the store with a tank top on.
Yeah. Right after his haircut.
Right after his haircut.
But yeah, if you're going to the gym and you're wearing a sports bra
Oh gosh.
and you're wearing what, a lot of these women post themselves, selfies, even in the church, they selfie themselves in those areas, wearing those type of things. As a husband, if I'm like, hey, can you start wearing a baggy t-shirt, a sweater? It makes me feel uncomfortable the way someone would say, oh, that's so controlled. There's a thing called respect in marriage,
Right.
mutual respect
Right.
of what a person is comfortable with and what a person's not uncomfortable with.
Well, because
and I'm not assuming
yeah.
that you are some type of floozy for doing it.
Right.
I'm just assuming, hey, I just prefer my wife to be a little more covered up when she goes to the gym. I'm not there.
Right.
I'm a guy. I know what guys are doing when they walk by. I would be doing it to you if I walk by.
Right.
And so I would prefer that maybe you put on an oversized hoodie. If you were like,
Right.
but other girls are wearing this, I'd be like, why are you fighting for the yoga? It helps me stretch more. There are other things you could wear. Wearing that underneath with sweatpants is not deterring you from stretching well.
Right.
So if there's an immediate like, hey, why do I have to stop going to the strip club? Well, number one, I can tell you why that's unhealthy. But number two, your spouse has asked you
Right.
to stop.
Right.
They have started to create a boundary, but it wasn't this way 9 months ago. Yeah, people change. People
Right.
grow. People have new convictions. The person you married 5 years ago is not the person you're married to today. And so you're going to have to make a decision whether the guy's going to have to make, is this the spouse that you want? Because this is the spouse that's growing and is becoming something new.
Right.
And you're going to have to make a decision and say, do I love her enough
Yeah.
to stop watching porn? Do I love her enough to
Right.
stop going to the strip club? Do I love her enough to stop going out and drinking with my buddies? Which it seems like she said he was okay with that. He stopped
Right,
drinking more.
right.
So it's like, okay, you love her, you care about her, but when the spouse, as long as is it within reason, when the spouse moves the boundary of
Right.
the line in the marriage, a healthy marriage will respect that boundary.
Absolutely.
An unhealthy marriage will immediately self-define on why this thing, because it is a thing at the end of the day, thing gives me value, or why I like it. Why, and then a therapist, and even if you sat down with a pastoral counselor, one of the immediate questions I'm going to say is, why, because whether you have it or not, but why do you need something else to find attraction or intimacy with your wife? Why do you need pornography? Why do you need a third person in the relationship? Why do you need a strip club? Why do you need flirting with someone in the DMs to then be able to go home to your spouse? And this is male and female, because we've seen both sides needing to do these type of things. Because the way God has expressly built us is the fullness of enjoyment is meant to be with your spouse. And so if you need other things, then you have an addiction. There probably is an addiction
Yeah.
to sexual arousal and divisiveness and really in the sense of saying I need help in finding fulfillment in my spouse.
Right. Right.
That is an unhealthy thing that needs to be detoxed.
Absolutely.
Not just if you're a Christian, we could talk about how you need to
Right.
confess your sin and rely on Christ. And let's just say you're not in the church and you're just meeting with a therapist. A therapist would say you might need to detox from these things because your chemical imbalance on what it takes to be aroused. Like you may need to get your blood worked.
Yeah.
You may be low on testosterone, or for a woman, you may be low on certain hormones. If you need that level of sexuality to provoke you to want to be intimate with your spouse, then something with you has gotten over exhilarated sexually. And I talk about this all the time. And in my future book, I talk about it, how the more sexual experiences you have with people, the more that statistically it is impossible for you to be aroused by your spouse, because you have so much deviancy outside of your spouse that in order for those chemicals to kick, you need it. It's like the person who, smokes weed every single day just to hit off a marijuana blunt. It doesn't do it. They need to have a big old blunt,
thing. Yeah,
because their ability to be able to hold on to the marijuana has grown. So they got to keep increasing. You got to keep increasing dosage. You got to keep increasing dosage.
Right.
So these things go from, okay, you go into pornography, you go into strip club, you go, next thing is going to be, oh, should we add a person into the relationship? Or maybe, hey, babe, why don't we give each other one night passes twice a year? Wait, you're just going to keep towing the line. So for me, in God's view of marriage, he says, here's the boundary of healthy intimacy.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything with your spouse goes that includes you and your spouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's the boundary. And so go buy a stripper pole for your bedroom. And I would tell her, you might want to
learn a couple moves.
Buy a book or look on YouTube on how to spin on the pole and put a pole in your bedroom.
Right.
You know, like whatever it may be, right?
Right.
But buy an encrypted phone and film each other and watch it. I don't know, right? But your enjoyment needs to be with your spouse. Because that's the way God. And so I'm not saying that you can't spice up.
Right.
There's a boundary on what spicing is. And that goes for anything.
Anything. Yeah, I know. My mother-in-law, or your mother-in-law told you the other day to make sure.
Your mom? Oh, yeah.
Told you the other day that you need to start hiding the pictures I'm sending you. She
said, those aren't readily available, are they? I said, no, they're in an encrypted app on my phone. She said, okay, good. She said, I don't want my daughter's pictures out there.
But no, I agree. And you starting off with the strong answer of going to therapy, getting the counseling that you need, and her now knowing that she's in our church, more than welcome to go to Forward and really dive deep into that healing process, because it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time for the healing process, and it's going to take some time for your flesh to not arise and say, hey, you know what? Let me just once it's okay. You know what I mean? But I know you spoke on a message the other day. I believe it was a Wednesday night, and it's giving yourself grace through your trials and knowing that if you do mess up once, how many days did you go without? Yeah. What was it? That was
yeah, it was a Mark 7 Wednesday
7, yes.
night. Yeah, Wednesday night. It's the progress of growth. People want to never make a mistake again, rather than measuring their life by the progress of growth.
Right.
Used to smoke weed every day, and this time you did it once every 90 days. There's progress of growth.
Absolutely.
I don't celebrate that you smoke weed, but I celebrate that 2 years ago you could never imagine going more than 3 days without smoking.
Right.
This time you went 90 days. Let's celebrate that. Let's do 6 months next time. Not on month 6 you're gonna say, okay, I can smoke again. But it's the fact of let's celebrate the fact that you're growing in your discipline.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage her is, you're doing a good job at setting the boundaries with your husband. You're doing a good job at communicating what it seems like, how you have changed and how your heart is changing and how your boundaries are changing. And what this is why I encourage counseling, because what you're going to have to do now is process what happens if he doesn't stop. What happens if this makes our marriage seem to get worse, because it's not God's fault. It's because what some people will do is go, our marriage was good when we were doing all that stuff. Now that I'm a Christian and now that we're not, well, yeah, you're detoxing. Have you ever met someone who's detoxing from heroin or alcohol? They're miserable to be around. They have short tempers. They have headaches. They have anxiety. Many of them have to go to rehab, and they have to have full-time medical care and counseling care. Why? Because when you're detoxing from something, emotions are high, elements are high, desires high. So yes, if in your marriage you're pulling away from all these things that you've given yourself to. You basically had very minimal boundaries when it came to your marriage. And now you're saying, oh, we're going to detox, and God, we're going to be on the up and up from here, right? It's like, well, no. You guys are probably going to be short-tempered with each other. You guys are probably going to yell at each other. You're going to be annoyed with each other. Your intimacy for a season may be shoddy because you're trying to figure out a world now where you can't inject a third party or a third person into your marriage. So now it's almost like, okay, I mean, I felt that when I first got married. When I first got married and Ashley's like, I don't like doing this and I don't like doing that. And I'm thinking in my head, well, I used to date girls all the time that were totally down for that. And then, so as my flesh is like, is my flesh is like, oh, you married a girl who not going to do what you, and it's also like, Adam, you're an idiot for not saving yourself for marriage, because now you're going to have to detox from that obsession of whatever you saw in a porn, whatever you know, I had hit strip clubs before and all that stuff like that. And if I came to you and I'm like, I want you to dance for me, you're like, I'm not dancing for you. And I'm like, well, I used to be able to pay $40 at the Spearmint Rhino and get a naked dance.
You better
and
go
you're
back
like,
over there.
And you're like, no, you're not getting that. It's not my spouse's fault.
Right.
It's my fault.
Right.
That I've allowed my flesh to be gratified to that degree, that I needed that much
100%.
deviancy to find arousal and pleasure. And so people always ask, like, why does God have one man and woman? Why does God want you to save yourself for marriage? Not only is it part of his perfect plan that mirrors Christ and the church, it's also God's way of trying to help you from your own perversion and your own distaste for your marriage. The statistics are the statistics. The more sexual encounters, the more sexual experiences, the more sexual things that you do outside of one person, the more chances you have of unfulfillment in your marriage, the more chances you have of divorce in your marriage. And the statistic is the statistic. It's not even a Christian statistic. It's just the more outside players you add to your marriage, the more it increases of lack of fulfillment in your marriage. Let's just say tomorrow you're making X amount of money at your job. And then you leave your work and there's a guy that's outside that's like, hey, if you just deliver this package, let's just say you make $500 a day, $300 a day. And you leave work and someone just says, hey, on your way home, if you just drop this package off over here, I'll give you $200. You're like, oh man, that's like a quarter of what I make a day. And I just got to drop it off on the way home from work. Yeah, I'll do that. And you're doing that now for like a month. And then one day the person goes, if you deliver another package, I'll give you another $200. You go, oh, man, I can make $400. I make $500 a day. I can make $400 within making 2 stops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then one day that person goes, hey, I'll pay you $1,000 a day if you just quit that job and you work for me. Like that job, prior to that person giving you 200, like you loved it. You loved that job. Right. You were fine waking up in the morning. You had a system. You got a cup of coffee. You did, like, you were good with it. But now that person started injecting, you can make a little bit more money here, a little bit more money. And the more you do that, and the more you do that. And the next thing you know, you're going to tell that person, I know I'm making $1,000, but can we get to $1,200? What happens in that third party of your marriage when you're like, okay, me and my wife, we're having pretty good intimacy, but if you add some strip clubs, $200, you get a little, it's a little nice. And you're like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And then it goes, oh, okay. Then the next month you go, oh man, I remember the night we went to the strip club, we drank, we had fun, we came home, we had the best sex of our life. Maybe instead of doing that once this month, let's try it 3 times this month. And the next thing you know, you went from going together, then now he's over there by himself.
Right.
And he's like, I loved you, but I don't even really need you anymore. I'm getting it over here. And then it just and I'm not saying that's a guaranteer, but I'm just saying it's a dangerous road to play.
100%.
That's where pornography plays. That's where these marriage swaps play. That's where the pineapple cup play. All these things that are promising spice to your marriage. It's the devil's tactic to get. The devil hates marriage.
100%.
The devil hates God's picture of a marriage. So however the devil can inject himself into your marriage and get, hopefully at some point, you guys isolated from each other, where you're enjoying arousal without each other, the devil's going, oh, I'm winning. I'm winning. They don't need each other anymore. God wants them to need each other. God wants them to become one, but now I've made them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's dangerous. Yeah. And so I think even if she messaged and she's like, we don't even go to church, we're not even Christians, but this is what we're doing, what do y'all think? I would plead, hey, eliminate this out of your marriage as fast as possible.
Yeah. Christian or not.
You got to eliminate, because the statistics are this is not going to go down a healthy road.
Absolutely.
And now that you are Christians, you're experiencing the conflict of what you said, conviction, God speaking and the Holy Spirit going, hey, this is not it. This is not it, to her, to now the marriage
Right.
being in friction.
Well, and that's the marriage and friction. And you make a great point of like, if we're doing it individually, at what point does the insecurity start to arise then, and doubt and strife and anger when it comes to allowing something into the relationship, because now you're deeming it as this has more weight than I do in our marriage, or it holds more weight than I do, because you're now more aroused by going to watch something or see another woman than you do from me. So now her on this trek of getting a relationship with God, and her trying to build her faith up. The one thing, like I'm just going to go back to, is I implore her to go to forward, because what the enemy obviously wants is division within a marriage. But what else he wants to do is just crush you and crumble you in your own identity. And your identity has nothing to do with the pornography. Your identity has nothing to do with the strip club. You are now finding true fruit from Christ. So for her, it's making sure that she is mentally and physically healthy as she goes and seeks out God in this relationship, and understanding, like you said, like the enemy wants to swindle his way within a relationship, wants to swindle his way. So now you're saying him making the statement of why everyone else is doing it is the enemy's in the relationship. Mm-hmm. Because he was okay with the drinking, because that was probably easy. That probably came along with the things that they were doing. That wasn't the substantial thing that got them to do it. But the main thing was the pornography or the strip club, to why it's just a natural thing where it's just become a part of their life. I want to say, what'd she say, 2 years? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very long time. Yeah. So for her, it's making sure that her identity is, as she grows in her Christian walk, becomes truly rooted in Christ, and know that it is an uphill battle from here, and know that God can restore and heal and supply all that she needs, and be the wife that she is intended to be, but also stay prayed up for her husband, and stay prayed up for him, that he can see what it is causing in their family and in their relationship, and that it has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with the sin that's in the relationship. That God isn't the reason that the division is being caused, but the sin that you allowed in is the main reason. And I know I just pretty much said what you said, but it's encouraging her, because she's like, what now? And so it's encouraging her that her faith is strong, that her identity is strong in Christ, and not to find, this is actually harder than what it is. I'm just going to go back, because I'm going to go back to where we were happy. Yeah. And I'm just going to give into it.
All right, everybody, welcome to our advertisement.
Yeah.
So you're watching our episode. We did a short break.
Yep.
What do we got a little break for, Ashley?
Oh, something really, really exciting. That when you came home and told me about the news, I was overjoyed, and I hope you had 30 pieces, but you only had one, but it's okay. We are going to be talking about our new partnership.
Yes.
With an amazing jeweler.
Yes. So we have big news. We've teamed up with the exceptional jeweler, Aaron Barnett, to bring you a unique jewelry experience, from precious metals to custom creations. Aaron has it all, whether you're treating yourself or surprising a loved one. So it could be for you or someone you love, okay? Mother, grandmother, sibling, spouse, a loved one. His jewelry is a testament to cherished moments. As part of our community, you get special discounts and a chance to visit his private showroom in Los Angeles. So for anniversaries, birthdays, or just because, discover Aaron's jewelry in our show notes. Elevate your relationships with exquisite pieces from our partner, Aaron Barnett. It's a great relationship that we have, because now we can offer great discounts to our Beyond I Do community to hook them up. And so you visit, like we said, visit the show notes, and let's get back into the show. And following Christ is hard. Yeah. And Jesus makes the statement in it could be Mark 7. It's in the Gospels, but as he's talking to the Pharisees, he makes a statement to say, those that have sinned much, need much forgiveness, but also know the weight of their forgiveness. Yeah. And he's basically telling the Pharisees, like, you're scoffing at these individuals who are far from God, but that means that when they come to God, they know how far they've come.
Right.
And so it's that idea of like, be encouraged that you've come far. The fact that what your marriage or what you guys were doing before, it's not that it's embarrassing. It's not that, Christian, we're so far from the Christian picture of what God can do. It's the fact that, no, even at the state that you found yourself in, you have found God. And so be actively praying for your husband, actively, as we would say, intercede for your husband. Pray every single day that God captivate his heart, that God would reach him and touch him. Pray every day that you be an example as the wife in the marriage that would lead your husband to salvation.
Yeah.
Pray for his soul. Intercede for him. God hears those prayers. God moves in those prayers. Set your boundaries. Put the line in the sand of, now that you are following Christ, this is not what you're okay with.
Right.
But also know that you're not on easy street and you didn't choose to be on easy street. So I know sometimes when people come newly to Christ, they're like, what can I say to convince my spouse? Or what can I do to fix this issue? And the reality is that person's not you. And so number one, you can start praying for them. Number two, you can start controlling your side of the things.
Right.
And you can start holding yourself accountable, and you can tell them this is a line in the sand, but also know within there needs to be grace to say, I desperately want my spouse to know this freedom that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And if I was talking to him, whether he was coming to church or not, I would say, you need to love your wife. And part of loving your wife is listening to what she believes God is doing in her life. Whether you think God is real, whether you think Christianity is a thing, she is experiencing God's work at her life. If she is asking you to do some things, if you feel like your marriage cannot happen without these things, then I urge you to take a deep look in yourself on why you need so many outside things to make your marriage work or to fulfill your marriage, whether it be in intimacy or anything else. Take a deep, deep look in yourself. Secular therapists all day, as long as it's fair game, but the data isn't there. The secular statistics even show that is destined to an unhealthy marriage. And the amount of people you and I have counseled, and you and I were even a product of many of these unhealthy relationships that we brought into our marriage. We needed counseling. We needed therapy. We needed accountability. We needed community. So for her, I'd tell her, get in community, start doing a Bible study with some women, start having some people praying with you and for you, and have some people praying for your husband as well. And just pray that day that he be open to come, not only to church, but just have a relationship with God. Because if he can seek God's plan for his life, then he can see how much God can fulfill them in the way that God has created marriage, instituted marriage. So I appreciate her asking that. It takes a lot of bravery to, because when people DM us, their names on it and all that stuff like that, and so that takes a lot of bravery. But you could tell she's hungry to see her relationship healthy. So that's what the prayer is for. That they do find what they need in not only in Christ but in their marriage, just with themselves.
Good. So good.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Beyond I Do. Don't put in the comments today if any of these things were you guys. No, I'm just playing. Normally we're like, put in the comments if you've experienced that. It's like everybody's going to be like silent comments.
Right.
No, I'm just playing. Thanks everybody for tuning in and joining us. God bless.
Bye.